So let's talk a little bit about perimenopause and unusual symptoms. We know that perimenopause has a lot of symptoms. In fact, we don't actually know the actual number because if you research it or look online, you will find varying articles. Some say 30, some say 60. What we know is that there are a lot of symptoms. Now, what happens, unfortunately, is that many people focus on the common symptoms. So the ones that we all sort of know are the hot flushes and the night sweats and the mood swings and maybe irregular periods. And the problem with that is that when someone then develops a symptom that is not a usual symptom, nobody knows what to do. They don't know what's going on. The doctor probably doesn't even know that this is a symptom of perimenopause, and they cannot help you if they don't know what's going on. So I think it's useful to highlight some of the unusual ones. So if you do have an unusual symptom, then you can sort of say, oh, hold on, is this a perimenopause symptom? You can go online, check it out, take that information to your GP. And once the GP knows that this is what it is, then they may be able to offer you some support or advice. So the symptoms I'm going to mention are quite unusual. However, saying that, they are still quite common because I discovered a lot of these symptoms from being on several menopause forums, because there was a time when I was having symptoms that were not usual and I didn't know what it was. And it was only on being on a forum and hearing other people saying, oh, I have this symptom, I realized that, oh, hold on, this is a perimenopausal symptom. So, there are many, many unusual. I'm just going to mention 10. There are many more than 10. So if you have a symptom and you suspect it could be linked to perimenopause, do some research. So the first one I'm going to talk about is bruising. Bruising is a very common, well, I say very common, but it's quite common during perimenopause. And many women report seeing bruises just appear on their bodies. But the thing is, many people do not tie it in to perimenopause. But what happens during perimenopause is we have a kind of loss of spatial awareness. So even though a table that is sitting in front of us has been there forever, we may get up, and because we've lost that kind of spatial awareness, we hit, our leg on the table, and that will give us a bruise. The thing is, a lot of the time we don't remember that we even did that. So we're waking up in the morning, we've got bruises all over from hitting several things, and we can't remember how we got the bruises. So that's quite common. The other thing that's common, but not that common, is gum disease. A lot of women struggle with their gums and their teeth during perimenopause. I had a hell of a time for about a year and a half, and I was constantly going to the dentist. And I did ask him at a point, I said, could this be something to do with perimenopause? He said, no. It was like, nope, it's not perimenopause. But of course, I did my research and I realized it was. So if you have gum problems during perimenopause, the best thing to do is be conservative about whatever treatment, because if you're not careful, what happens is, because the dentists are not aware, they might want to do something, aggressive. Like they will say, oh, maybe we need a root canal, or we need this, or we need that. And actually, that's not what the problem is. So just be aware of that. The next one is static. A lot of women report being very, having electric shocks. So you touch something, you're like, ooh, that's a little shock. And that used to happen to me a lot. I didn't realize it was a perimenopausal symptom. So having a lot of static is another of these unusual symptoms. Bladder problems, constantly needing to go to the loo. This is, again, a symptom of perimenopause, because a lot of our muscles and our ligaments and parts of our body that have estrogen receptors will not work properly. And the bladder is one of those things. So having bladder problems, needing to go to the toilet constantly, if you've never been like that, could be a sign that you are in or going into perimenopause. The next one is body odor. I've never had this, but a lot of people I know have reported having a strange body odor that doesn't smell like them. And even though they're doing the same thing, they have the same routine, the washing, the deodorants, whatever, but they recall that, they say that I have this kind of weird body odor. That has also been reported as a perimenopausal symptom. The next one is pins and needles. Actually, this one is quite common, so I'm not sure why it doesn't get mentioned more. Having pins and needles in your feet and in your fingers. Remember that our circulation is going to be affected by the drop in the hormones. and therefore we tend to have poor circulation in our fingers and in our toes. So pins and needles is quite a common perimenopausal symptom. The next one is tremors. Having tremors is quite unusual. Not many women have this, but it's still reported as a perimenopausal symptom. So if you have tremors and there is no explanation, obviously the first thing you have to do is rule out everything else. Neurological, make sure there's nothing else going on. If those tremors are not, they're not attached to any other illness or problem that you have, they may be caused by perimenopause. And as I said, all of this information is online. The next one is stabbing headaches. A lot of people report having very strong headaches, but it feels like they're being stabbed at the back of their head. And I used to get that, like I'd have like a piercing pain at the back of my head, and the headache usually remains towards the back end. That is perimenopausal symptom. Acid reflux. Now, you may have had acid reflux in the past, or heartburn, or any of these things in the past. But if you suddenly develop acid reflux and it's very persistent, and acid reflux can be horrific if it persists for a long time, it may be due to your perimenopause time of life. I certainly started getting more acid reflux around perimenopause, and I still have it now. So just understand that it may have something to do with this time of life. But of course, you can also manage acid reflux with other things. And the last thing that I'm going to mention is the feeling of insects crawling all over your skin. People report that they feel like there are ants or something on their skin, and it's just that the skin is very sensitive and they feel very prickly. This is also a perimenopausal symptom. Now, if any of these symptoms are things that you think, oh, actually, that sounds familiar, you may want to research each one individually, or the one that you're suffering from individually. I can't help. This is part of what I do, but you can also do it yourself. Research this individually and see whether there are things you can do. Some of these symptoms, there's nothing you can do there. There's things you have to tolerate. You may be able to manage them by doing certain things. For example, with the insects crawling, this is also tied into a sensitivity on the skin, and many women also find that certain fabrics can make this worse. So for example, changing the kind of fabrics that you wear may help with something like that, and it would be the same with everything else. You just need to know how to manage or deal with it. But as I said, if you need any help, please send me a message. So I hope this is useful. Let me know if you have any questions.